He was, by all accounts, the embodiment of aristocratic restraint, the antithesis of her father's moral weakness. With a deep breath, Amelia broke the seal on the latest letter. "Miss Lockwood," it began in a sharp, decisive hand. "Your continued silence compels me to be more direct. I have respected your obvious reluctance to engage in correspondence, but I find myself unable to set aside thoughts of our conversation regarding the moral implications in Shelley's works. I request the honor of your presence at Northcott House this Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock. My carriage will call for you. There is a matter of significant importance I wish to discuss regarding a certain collection of literature that may be of interest to you. I assure you this meeting is of the utmost propriety and relates to a matter that concerns your late father's affairs, which I believe may be of benefit to restore what was lost. Please do not refuse this invitation, as you have my previous correspondence. Yours in earnest anticipation. Northcott." Amelia's hand trembled. Her father's affairs. What could the Duke possibly know of such things, and why, after 5 years, would he take an interest? "He cannot restore my father's reputation," she murmured to her empty sitting-room. "Nothing can erase such disgrace." And yet, the promise of something, anything, that might lift the veil of shame that had shrouded her existence since her father's downfall was too tempting to dismiss entirely. The following afternoon found Amelia pacing her modest drawing-room, dressed in her finest day gown, a serviceable blue silk that had seen better days but was still presentable enough for a formal call. The Duke's carriage had arrived precisely at 2:30, its gleaming black lacquer and silver fittings drawing curious glances from neighbours. As the carriage rolled through Mayfair toward the grand Northcott house on Grosvenor Square, Amelia rehearsed what she would say. She would be polite but distant. She would listen to whatever proposition the Duke had regarding her father's affairs, decline graciously, and retreat to the safe, if lonely, existence she had carved for herself. Love, marriage, true acceptance in society, these were luxuries not afforded to women with tainted names. She had accepted this truth years ago, had built her life around it. What other choice did she have? The carriage came to a halt before an imposing Portland stone facade. A footman in the Northcott livery opened the door and offered his white-gloved hand to assist her descent. "Miss Lockwood," he intoned with a bow. "His Grace is expecting you in the library." Amelia followed the footman through the grand entrance hall, past ancestral portraits and priceless art, to a pair of mahogany doors that opened into what could only be described as a temple to the written word. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined every wall, interrupted only by tall windows that flooded the room with afternoon light. The scent of leather bindings and beeswax polish filled the air. "Miss Lockwood," came a deep voice from near the fireplace. The Duke of Northcott stood tall and imposing in a perfectly tailored charcoal frock coat. At 35, he cut an impressive figure, broad-shouldered, with a jawline that could have been carved from marble. His dark hair was swept back from a high forehead, and those penetrating grey eyes regarded her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Your Grace," Amelia curtsied, determined to maintain her composure. "Thank you for sending your carriage. Thank you for accepting my invitation. After 4 unanswered letters, I feared a 5th would similarly disappear into the void." There was no humour in his voice, merely statement of fact. "I apologize for my lack of response," she said carefully. "I confess I was puzzled by your interest in corresponding with me. Please sit." He gestured to a pair of leather chairs positioned near a small table upon which tea had been arranged. "I shall explain everything." Amelia perched on the edge of the chair, back straight, hands folded in her lap as the Duke took the seat opposite her. "I'll come directly to the point, Miss Lockwood. I have recently acquired a collection of letters and documents that belonged to your father." Her posture stiffened further. "My father's papers were seized by the Crown after his. After the trial." "Not all of them." The Duke leaned forward slightly. "These were in the possession of Lord Harrington, who, as you may know, passed away last month." Amelia's mind raced. Lord Harrington had been her father's closest friend until the scandal, when he had, like everyone else, severed all ties with the Lockwood family. "And how did you come to possess them?" she asked. "I purchased his library at auction." "These documents were hidden in a false bottom of a writing desk." He paused. Miss Lockwood, I have reason to believe your father was not guilty of the crimes for which he was convicted. The room seemed to tilt slightly. What? She whispered. The letters suggest he was protecting someone whose disgrace would have had far-reaching consequences beyond his own reputation. That's impossible, Amelia said, though her voice lacked conviction. How many nights had she lain awake, unable to reconcile the loving, principled father she had known with the corrupt judge described in the newspapers? He confessed. Yes, the Duke said, but these letters suggest the confession was itself a sacrifice. He rose and walked to his desk, retrieving a small stack of papers bound with string. I believe these belong to you now. I've read them, I'm afraid. I needed to understand their significance before approaching you, but they contain personal correspondence that should be in your possession. Amelia stared at the bundle he held out to her, unable to move. Why would you do this? Why seek me out? Something flickered in the Duke's expression, discomfort perhaps, or hesitation. I knew your father, Miss Lockwood, not well but enough to have respected him. The man described in those scandal sheets never aligned with the judge I encountered in legal circles. You were acquainted with my father. This was the first she'd heard of any connection. I observed him in court several times when I was studying law before inheriting the dukedom. His reputation for fairness was unmatched. He paused, which made his fall from grace all the more shocking. Amelia finally took the bundle of letters, her fingers trembling slightly. I don't understand what you expect me to do with these. The trial concluded 5 years ago. My father is dead. His reputation cannot be restored. Perhaps not fully, the Duke conceded, but the truth has value of its own, does it not? And there is the matter of your reputation by association. She gave a bitter laugh. My reputation is beyond salvation, Your Grace. Society has a long memory for scandal and little appetite for redemption. I disagree, his voice was firm. With the proper evidence and influential support, perceptions can be altered. Influential support, she echoed, such as yours, I presume. The Duke did not flinch under her skeptical gaze. Yes. My position affords certain advantages that could be of use in such an endeavor. And what would you gain from championing the daughter of a disgraced judge? Amelia asked directly, years of wariness overriding propriety. For the first time, the Duke appeared slightly discomforted. I admit to a personal interest in seeing justice served, even belatedly. Your father's case has troubled me over the years. Amelia wasn't convinced. Men of the Duke's station did not involve themselves in such matters without purpose. But the letters in her hand represented the first connection to her father that wasn't tainted by shame since his death. She couldn't refuse them, whatever the Duke's motives. I shall read these, she said finally. But I make no promises regarding any action afterward. That is all I ask for now. He rang a small bell, summoning the footman. Jenkins will show you to a private sitting room where you may review the letters undisturbed. Take all the time you need. I have matters to attend to, but will be available should you wish to discuss what you've read. Amelia followed the footman to a small but elegant sitting room overlooking the garden. Once alone, she untied the string with trembling fingers and began to read. The first letter, dated 3 months before her father's arrest, was from Lord Harrington, Lockwood. The situation has become untenable. B insists on pursuing the matter through official channels. He cannot be dissuaded and claims to have evidence that will implicate not only C, but potentially the M family as well. You must prevent this case from proceeding. Use whatever influence you possess. The stability of the government itself may hang in the balance. Burn this letter. H. More letters followed, each more urgent than the last. It became clear that her father had been caught between powerful forces, a case involving corruption that reached into the highest echelons of government and his own principles of justice. The final letter in the bundle, written in her father's hand but never sent, brought tears to her eyes. My dearest Amelia, if you are reading this, then matters have proceeded as I fear they might. I want you to know that whatever you may hear about me in the coming days, I have acted according to my conscience. Sometimes the appearance of dishonor is the price of a greater honor. I have agreed to accept responsibility for actions that were never mine, to protect both you and others who would suffer far worse consequences were the truth to emerge. Forgive me for the burden this will place upon you. Know that every decision I have made has been with your welfare at heart, though it may not seem so. The trust fund I established in your name should provide modest but sufficient income. It cannot be touched by any legal proceedings against me, as it was created through your mother's inheritance. Live with integrity, my darling girl, even when the world makes it difficult. And remember that the truth, though it may be buried for a time, has a way of eventually finding the light. With eternal love. Your father. Amelia pressed the letter to her chest, tears flowing freely down her cheeks. All these years, she had harbored a seed of doubt about her father's guilt, buried beneath layers of public shame and abandoned hope. Now that seed burst into bloom. Her father had been protecting someone, perhaps many someones. He had sacrificed his reputation, his freedom, ultimately his life, for a greater cause he believed in. And the Duke of Northcott somehow knew this, or at least suspected it. When she had composed herself, Amelia rang the bell. The footman appeared almost instantly. I would like to speak with His Grace now, if he is available, she said, gathering the letters carefully. Of course, Miss Lockwood. His Grace asked to be notified when you were ready. Please follow me back to the library. The Duke was standing by the window when she entered, his tall figure silhouetted against the late afternoon light. He turned at the sound of the door, and something in his expression softened when he saw her tear-stained face. You've read them, then? He said quietly. Yes. Amelia approached, the letters clutched to her chest like a shield. My father was innocent. It appears so. Did you know this before you acquired the letters? She asked directly. The Duke hesitated. I suspected. There were inconsistencies in the case that never sat right with legal minds. Your father's sudden confession, the convenient evidence, the speed of the trial, it all happened with unusual haste. Why does this matter to you now, after 5 years? She pressed. He gestured for her to sit once more, and resumed his own chair opposite her. Miss Lockwood, I believe we may be able to help one another. Your father's case is connected to a matter I am investigating regarding certain governmental improprieties. The same individuals who orchestrated your father's downfall may be involved in current corruption. And you need my help. How could I possibly assist a duke in such matters? You have your father's letters now, evidence that could begin to unravel the truth. But more importantly, you have your father's mind. He leaned forward slightly. I've observed you at the literary salons. You possess a remarkable analytical ability and insight into human nature. Those qualities, combined with your personal connection to this matter, make you uniquely positioned to help. Amelia stared at him, bewildered by the turn the conversation had taken. You want me to help you investigate corruption in government? That seems highly irregular. These are irregular circumstances, he replied, and I am not suggesting anything improper. I propose a collaboration of sorts. You would assist me in reviewing documents, connecting patterns, using your literary expertise to decipher correspondences that may contain coded messages. And in return, she asked cautiously, in return, I will use every resource at my disposal to clear your father's name, and by extension, restore your position in society. It was an extraordinary offer, too extraordinary to be taken at face value. Why would you take such a risk? Surely associating with me could only damage your own reputation. Something in the Duke's expression changed, a flicker of emotion breaking through his composed exterior. Perhaps I have my own reasons for seeking justice in this matter, he said quietly. Not all debts appear in account books, Miss Lockwood. Amelia studied him, trying to discern his true intentions. Everything she knew about the world told her to refuse, to retreat to the safe obscurity she had cultivated. Men of power did not extend helping hands without expecting something in return. And yet, the possibility of vindicating her father, of reclaiming her place in the world not as an object of pity, but as a woman of worth. I will need time to consider your proposal, she said finally. Of course, he nodded, but I must ask for your discretion. The matters we've discussed today touch on powerful individuals who would not hesitate to silence further inquiry. You believe I could be in danger? The thought had not occurred to her. "I believe caution is warranted," he replied carefully, "which is why I would suggest you consider staying here at Northcott House while we pursue this matter." Amelia's eyes widened. "That would be entirely inappropriate. My aunt, Lady Catherine Northcott, resides in the East Wing and would serve as chaperone. Your reputation would be preserved." He paused. "And your safety ensured." The suggestion was shocking, and yet strangely practical. If what the Duke suggested was true, if powerful people had engineered her father's disgrace, then her possession of these letters could indeed put her at risk. "I have commitments, the literary salons, which can be temporarily excused with an appropriate explanation," he countered. "A family matter requiring your attention, perhaps." Amelia's mind raced. Every instinct for self-preservation honed over 5 difficult years told her to refuse, to return to her modest but predictable existence. And yet the letters in her hand spoke of a father who had sacrificed everything for principle. Could she do any less? "I need one day," she said finally, "to arrange my affairs and to think." The Duke nodded. "My carriage will be at your disposal tomorrow afternoon, should you decide to accept. And if I decline, then the letters remain yours, with my compliments, and we need not speak of this again." His expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes suggested disappointment at the prospect. As the Duke's carriage returned her to Curzon Street, Amelia's mind whirled with conflicting thoughts. Could she trust Sebastian Northcott? His reputation was impeccable, his position unassailable, but the same had once been said of her father. And while the Duke claimed to be motivated by justice, men of his rank rarely acted without self-interest. Yet the letters, they changed everything. If her father had been innocent, if his disgrace had been engineered by powerful forces, then her entire understanding of the past 5 years, of her place in the world, was built on falsehood. That night Amelia barely slept. By morning her decision was made. She would accept the Duke's offer, not out of trust, but out of duty to her father's memory and her own search for truth. She would, however, remain vigilant. The Duke of Northcott might be an ally, but she would not make the mistake of confusing alliance with friendship, let alone anything deeper. When the ducal carriage arrived the following afternoon, Amelia was ready, a small trunk packed with her essential belongings. She had informed her landlady she would be staying with distant relatives for a time, and had written to Lady Pembroke, claiming a family emergency requiring her absence from the upcoming salons. Upon arriving at Northcott House for the second time, Amelia was introduced to Lady Catherine, a formidable widow in her 60s whose sharp eyes missed nothing. "So you're Judge Lockwood's daughter," she said, appraising Amelia over her lorgnette. "I remember the scandal, of course. Never believed a word of it myself. Your father sentenced my late husband's cousin to transportation for embezzlement. A man that, uncompromising, doesn't suddenly decide to accept bribes." Amelia blinked, startled by the forthright declaration. "Thank you for that assessment, Lady Catherine." "Don't thank me for common sense, child. Now Sebastian has explained you'll be assisting him with some research project or other." She waved a hand dismissively. "I don't inquire into the particulars, but you'll be staying in the blue suite, which adjoins my rooms. Meals will be served in the family dining room, and you'll take tea with me each afternoon at 4. I keep a respectable household, even if my nephew occasionally forgets that scholarship needn't exclude basic social graces." With that pronouncement, Lady Catherine summoned a maid to show Amelia to her rooms, a suite so luxurious it made her modest townhouse look like a pauper's dwelling. That evening, dinner proved a surprisingly informal affair, with just the 3 of them. Lady Catherine dominated the conversation with observations on everything from politics to the latest fashions, occasionally drawing Amelia into the discussion with direct questions about her literary work. The Duke spoke little, though Amelia caught him watching her with an inscrutable expression several times throughout the meal. It was only after Lady Catherine retired that he addressed the matter at hand. "I've prepared a workroom for our research," he said, rising from the table. "If you're not too fatigued from the day's events, perhaps we might begin tonight." Amelia nodded, following him to what had once been a morning room, but now resembled a legal office. Papers were organized in neat stacks on a large table, and a chalkboard had been mounted on one wall, covered in names and dates connected by lines. Your father's case forms one part of a larger pattern, the Duke explained, indicating the chalkboard. Over the past decade, several judges and officials who showed interest in certain commercial enterprises have been removed from their positions through various means: scandal, sudden illness, or unexpected retirement. And you believe these were not coincidences, Amelia said, studying the names. I believe there exists a consortium of influential individuals who have been systematically removing obstacles to their business interests. He pointed to several names clustered together. These men all have connections to shipping companies that have secured exclusive contracts with the East India Company in the past 5 years. Including Lord Harrington, Amelia observed, recognizing the name. Yes. Your father was presiding over a case that would have exposed fraudulent practices within those shipping companies. 3 days before he was to issue his ruling, the bribery allegations emerged. Orchestrated by these men to remove him, Amelia said softly. So I believe. The Duke pulled out a chair for her at the table. These are the court records from your father's cases in the year preceding his arrest. I'd like you to review them, looking for any connections to these shipping companies or the individuals on our list. Amelia sat down, determination replacing her earlier uncertainty. I'll need to understand the legal terminology. My father never discussed his cases at home. I'll help you with that. He took the seat beside her, close enough that she could detect the faint scent of sandalwood from his shaving soap. For the next 3 hours, they worked side by side, the Duke explaining legal concepts with unexpected patience as Amelia meticulously examined court records. When the clock struck 11, he insisted she retire, despite her protests that she could continue. We have time, he said, his voice gentler than she had yet heard it. This is not a matter to be rushed. As days turned into weeks, a routine developed. Mornings were spent with Amelia reviewing documents while the Duke attended to his various responsibilities. Afternoons found them working together in the study, piecing together connections and building a case that increasingly pointed to a conspiracy involving several prominent members of Parliament and shipping magnates. Tea with Lady Catherine provided a welcome respite from the intensity of their work. The older woman never inquired about their research, but offered shrewd observations about society that often provided unexpected insights. Lord Bannister has always been too eager to align himself with whatever faction seems ascendant, she remarked one afternoon. During the Corn Law debates, he changed his position 3 times in as many months. Such comments frequently sent Amelia and the Duke back to their notes with fresh perspectives. As the weeks passed, Amelia found her initial wariness of the Duke gradually giving way to grudging respect. He approached their investigation with meticulous attention to detail and unwavering determination. More surprisingly, he treated her as an intellectual equal, valuing her insights and never dismissing her theories, no matter how speculative. For his part, Sebastian found himself increasingly impressed by Amelia's analytical mind and resilient spirit. The woman who had first entered his library with defensive pride had revealed herself to be not only intelligent, but possessed of a quiet courage that commanded his admiration. Neither spoke of the subtle shift in their relationship, the way their hands occasionally brushed when reaching for the same document, the lingering glances across the dinner table, the late-night conversations that strayed from their investigation to literature, philosophy, and personal histories. It was during one such conversation, nearly a month into their collaboration, that Sebastian revealed his own connection to the case. My father knew yours, he said quietly as they sat before the library fire, the evening's work concluded. They weren't friends, exactly, but they had a mutual respect. Amelia looked up from her tea, surprised. You never mentioned this before. No, he stared into the flames. It's complicated. My father approached yours privately about certain concerns he had regarding these shipping companies. He'd invested in them based on representations that later proved false. He was defrauded, Amelia asked. Yes. And when he discovered the extent of the fraud, he took his evidence to your father, who was known for his integrity. Sebastian's face tightened. 3 weeks later, my father was dead. Amelia set down her cup. You believe he was murdered. His death was ruled accidental, a riding accident, but my father was an excellent horseman who never rode without thoroughly checking his tack. He met her gaze directly. A week after he died, your father was arrested. You think they're connected, she whispered. I'm certain of it. The timing is too convenient. He leaned forward. My father's evidence disappeared. I've spent the past 5 years trying to recreate it, to understand what he uncovered that was worth killing for. And that's why you sought me out, Amelia said, understanding dawning. Not just to help clear my father's name, but to find justice for your own. Yes, he hesitated. I should have told you sooner. I feared you might think I was using you merely as a means to my own ends. Aren't you? The question held no accusation, merely curiosity. I began with that intention, he admitted, but now. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken feelings. Sebastian rose abruptly and walked to the window, his back to her. Now I find myself equally committed to restoring your father's reputation, and yours. Your situation affects me more than I anticipated. It was the closest either had come to acknowledging the growing attraction between them. Amelia felt her cheeks warm. We should return to our work tomorrow with fresh eyes, she said, rising. It's getting late. He turned, his expression carefully controlled once more. Of course. Good night, Miss Lockwood. Good night, Your Grace. As she made her way to her rooms, Amelia scolded herself for the flutter of disappointment she felt. Whatever personal regard might be developing between them could never lead anywhere. Even if they succeeded in clearing her father's name, the gulf between their stations remained unbridgeable. A duke did not marry the daughter of a judge, no matter how vindicated. She had learned long ago that hope was a luxury she could ill afford. Better to focus on their investigation and maintain the emotional distance necessary for her own protection. The following morning brought an unexpected development. A letter arrived for the Duke bearing the crest of Lord Ellsworth, one of the men they had identified as part of the conspiracy. He's hosting a house party next weekend at his estate in Surrey, Sebastian explained as they met in the study, and has extended an invitation to me and any guests currently staying at Northcott House. Amelia frowned. That seems oddly specific. Indeed, it suggests he's aware of your presence here. His expression darkened. I've been careful about our investigations, but it seems we've attracted attention nonetheless. Should we be concerned? Cautious, certainly. He tapped the invitation thoughtfully, but this may also present an opportunity. Ellsworth's estate houses his private papers, if we could gain access to them. You're suggesting we accept the invitation, walk into what could be a trap. With proper precautions, yes. He met her gaze steadily. Ellsworth would not risk any overt action against a duke in his own home. Social constraints provide a certain protection. Unless he believes the reward outweighs the risk, Amelia pointed out. A valid concern, Sebastian nodded. However, I believe our presence may prompt reactions that reveal more than continued investigation from a distance. People become careless when they believe they hold the upper hand. Amelia considered this. If we go, we'll need a convincing explanation for my presence in your household. Lady Catherine's chaperonage notwithstanding, it's an unusual arrangement. I've been considering that, he hesitated. The simplest explanation would be that you are being considered for a position as my ward's governess. You have no ward. Lord Ellsworth doesn't know that. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. We would need to present you as Miss Amelia Lawrence to avoid immediate recognition. Your father's case, while sensational at the time, is 5 years past. With a different name and appropriate introduction, you should pass unrecognized among those who weren't intimately familiar with the Lockwood family. The plan was audacious, but not without merit. Amelia had spent years cultivating invisibility. She knew how to avoid drawing attention, and the possibility of accessing Ellsworth's private papers could provide the evidence they needed. Very well, she agreed finally. But we must be exceptionally careful if Ellsworth suspects our true purpose. He won't, Sebastian assured her. We'll present ourselves exactly as expected, a duke and his household attending a social gathering. Nothing more. The week before the house party passed in careful preparation. Lady Catherine, brought into their confidence out of necessity, proved an unexpected ally. Ellsworth always was a pompous fool, she declared. His late wife was a dear friend of mine. She confided that he kept a separate set of account books in a hidden compartment in his study desk. The release mechanism is behind a small bronze horse on the left side. Amelia and Sebastian exchanged startled glances at this remarkably specific information. What? Lady Catherine raised an eyebrow. Did you think women of my generation merely discussed embroidery patterns? Elizabeth Ellsworth was no fool, and neither am I. Now Amelia will need appropriate attire if she's to pass as a gentlewoman seeking employment in an aristocratic household. With that pronouncement, Lady Catherine summoned her dressmaker, and Amelia suddenly found herself being fitted for several new gowns of understated elegance, appropriate for a gentlewoman of reduced circumstances but still fashionable enough for country house gatherings. The green silk for dinner on the first night, Lady Catherine instructed. It brings out the gold in your eyes without being too attention-seeking. The blue muslin for day wear. And the grey for travelling. By the time they departed for Surrey, Amelia felt transformed, not just in appearance but in purpose. The woman who had for years accepted her diminished place in society was gone. In her place stood someone determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Ellsworth Park proved to be an imposing Tudor estate set amid carefully landscaped grounds. As their carriage approached along the Grand Drive, Amelia felt a flutter of apprehension. They were about to step into the home of a man they believed had conspired to destroy her father, possibly even to have Sebastian's father killed. "Remember," Sebastian said quietly as they neared the entrance, "you are Miss Lawrence, a distant connection of my aunt's seeking a position as governess. You have been staying at Northcott House while arrangements are finalized." "Nothing more." "I understand." She straightened her shoulders. "I won't forget my role." Lord Ellsworth greeted them in the grand entrance hall, a corpulent man in his 60s with small, calculating eyes and an obsequious manner. "Your Grace, what an honor to have you join our little gathering." His gaze slid to Amelia with barely concealed curiosity. "And this must be your companion." "Miss Lawrence," Sebastian introduced her with perfect aristocratic indifference. "A connection of my aunt's who is being considered for a position in my household." Lady Catherine insisted she accompany us to observe proper society before taking charge of young minds. "How very thorough of Lady Catherine," Ellsworth murmured, his assessment of Amelia making her skin crawl. "Well, Miss Lawrence, I trust you'll find our gathering educational. We have quite the distinguished company this weekend." Indeed, as they were shown to the drawing room for pre-dinner introductions, Amelia recognized several names from their investigation: Lord Bannister, Sir William Holt, and Mr. James Carrington, all connected to the shipping conspiracy. Their wives and daughters completed the party, along with a few seemingly unconnected guests added for social balance. Throughout dinner, Amelia maintained her role perfectly, speaking modestly when addressed, but otherwise remaining quietly observant. Sebastian, seated far from her as befitted their supposed relationship, played his part with equal skill, the slightly bored aristocrat fulfilling a social obligation without particular enthusiasm. It was after the ladies withdrew, leaving the men to their port, that the first test of their deception came. As Amelia sat with the other women in the drawing room, pretending interest in their discussion of the latest Paris fashions, the Honourable Mrs. Holt suddenly turned to her. "Lawrence, I don't believe I'm familiar with the family. Where are you from originally, my dear?" Amelia smiled with practiced modesty. "Northumberland, ma'am. My father was a clergyman in a small parish near Alnwick. After his death, circumstances required me to seek employment." "How fortunate that Lady Catherine took an interest in your situation," Mrs. Holt replied, her tone suggesting she found it anything but fortunate. "Though I must say, it seems an unusual arrangement to have you travelling with the Duke before your position is secured." "Lady Catherine is most particular about proper deportment," Amelia replied smoothly. "She felt it important that I observe society before assuming responsibility for shaping young minds." "And does the Duke have children? I wasn't aware." His ward, Amelia clarified, following their prepared story. A distant cousin who will come under his Grace's guardianship next month when the child returns from school abroad. This seemed to satisfy Mrs. Holt, though Amelia caught several speculative glances throughout the evening. The implication was clear. Some suspected she might be the Duke's mistress, despite Lady Catherine's presence as chaperone. The thought brought an unwelcome flush to her cheeks. When the men rejoined them, Sebastian maintained an appropriate distance, though she occasionally caught his gaze across the room, a silent reassurance of his presence. The evening concluded without incident, and Amelia retired to her assigned chamber with relief at having navigated the first hurdle. The following day brought new challenges. After breakfast, the party divided for various activities: shooting for some gentlemen, a walk in the gardens for the ladies, cards for those preferring indoor pursuits. "Miss Lawrence," Lord Ellsworth approached as the groups were forming, "I understand you have some literary background. Perhaps you would enjoy seeing my library. It's quite extensive and includes several volumes on educational philosophy that might interest someone in your position." A perfect opportunity, too perfect perhaps. Amelia glanced at Sebastian, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "That's most kind, Lord Ellsworth," she replied. "I would be delighted." "Excellent, I shall give you a personal tour." He offered his arm with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Your Grace, will you be joining the shooting party?" "I believe I will," Sebastian replied casually. "Though perhaps I might join you in the library afterward. I've been meaning to inquire about that volume of Marlowe you mentioned at dinner." Of course. Ellsworth's smile tightened slightly. "We shall expect you when the shooting concludes." As Ellsworth led her through the house toward the library, Amelia maintained her role as the impressed governess-to-be, admiring the artwork and architecture with appropriate deference. The library, when they reached it, was indeed impressive: 2 stories of leather-bound volumes with a gallery running around the upper level. "You have a remarkable collection, my lord," she said truthfully. "A family passion for generations," he replied, watching her closely. "Though I must confess, some acquisitions are more recent. I've developed a particular interest in legal texts over the past decade." He guided her to a section where numerous law books stood in neat rows. "Fascinating how the law evolves, isn't it? How today's justice might be tomorrow's injustice, depending on who interprets the statutes." The comment seemed pointed, almost provocative. Amelia maintained her expression of polite interest. "I confess I know little of legal matters, my lord. My education focused on literature and languages." "Indeed. And yet I understand you've been assisting the Duke with some research project during your stay at Northcott House." His voice hardened slightly. "Research of a historical nature, I believe." Alarm bells rang in Amelia's mind, but she kept her composure. "His Grace kindly allowed me access to his library to prepare educational materials for his ward. His collection of historical texts is quite remarkable." "Is that all?" Ellsworth stepped closer. "Nothing related to, say, shipping contracts or judicial inquiries?" The pretense was crumbling. Amelia took a step back, maintaining a puzzled expression despite her racing heart. "I'm afraid I don't understand, my lord." "I think you do, Miss Lockwood." He smiled coldly at her startled reaction. "Oh yes, I know exactly who you are. The daughter of the disgraced Judge Lockwood, living under the Duke's protection while you both attempt to resurrect old scandals better left buried." "You're mistaken," she insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. "Please, let's not insult each other's intelligence." He moved to the library door and closed it. "I've had you both watched for weeks. Your little investigation has not gone unnoticed." Fear gripped Amelia, but she straightened her shoulders, abandoning the pretense. "Then you know we're aware of your role in my father's disgrace, and possibly in the Duke of Northcott's father's death." "Serious accusations," Ellsworth said mildly, "for which you have no evidence." "Not yet," she countered. "But we will find it." He laughed, the sound chilling in its confidence. "My dear Miss Lockwood, do you truly believe a woman with your tainted background could challenge men of our position? Even with a duke's support, which I might add, would evaporate quickly if certain rumors were to circulate about the nature of your arrangement." The Duke's interest is justice, nothing more, she said firmly. Perhaps, Ellsworth's smile was knowing. But society loves a scandal, doesn't it? A duke housing a disgraced judge's daughter under the thin pretense of potential employment. Even with his aunt as chaperone, tongues would wag. His reputation might withstand it. Dukes can weather most storms, but yours, what little standing you've managed to retain, would be obliterated. The threat was unmistakable. Amelia felt a cold certainty that Ellsworth would not hesitate to destroy her reputation completely if it served his purpose. "What do you want?" she asked directly. "Simple. Stop this foolish investigation. Return to your modest existence. Forget these delusions of vindicating your father, and I'll ensure no whisper of your stay at Northcott House reaches the gossip columns." Before she could respond, the library door opened, and Sebastian entered, his expression hardening as he took in the scene. "Ah, Your Grace," Ellsworth said smoothly. "Miss Lawrence and I were just discussing some fascinating aspects of the legal system. She's quite knowledgeable for a governess." "Indeed," Sebastian's voice was ice. "Miss Lawrence, I believe Lady Catherine was asking for you." "Of course, Your Grace." Amelia moved toward the door, relieved at his timely arrival. "Oh, and Ellsworth," Sebastian added casually, "I should mention that I've left detailed accounts of our investigation, including our suspicions regarding my father's death, with my solicitor. In the event of any unfortunate incidents or sudden scandals, those documents would immediately be forwarded to the Lord Chief Justice and several newspaper editors." Ellsworth's facade of genial host cracked slightly. "Are you threatening me, Northcott?" "Not at all. Merely informing you of a precautionary measure any prudent man would take when dealing with someone of your reputation." Sebastian's smile was lethal. "Now, shall we join the others? I believe luncheon is about to be served." Once safely away from the library, Sebastian guided Amelia to a secluded alcove. "Are you all right? What happened?" She quickly related Ellsworth's threats and his knowledge of her true identity. "We need to leave," Sebastian said decisively. "Our deception is compromised, and I don't trust Ellsworth not to take more direct action despite my warning. But the evidence, his private papers. Your safety is more important." His voice left no room for argument. "I'll make our excuses. An urgent message from London requiring my immediate return. We'll depart within the hour." As they prepared to leave, Amelia felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. They had come so close to potentially discovering the evidence they needed, only to be outmaneuvered. But Sebastian was right. Ellsworth's direct confrontation suggested a man who might take desperate measures if cornered. The journey back to London passed in tense silence. The implications of Ellsworth's threats hung between them, unspoken but undeniable. Their investigation had been exposed, and their opponents now knew exactly what they were attempting to prove. "What do we do now?" Amelia asked as the carriage approached London. Sebastian's expression was grim. "We continue, but with greater caution. Ellsworth's reaction confirms we're on the right track. He wouldn't have threatened you if he didn't fear what we might uncover. He seemed very confident we would find nothing. Men like Ellsworth always appear confident. It's how they've succeeded in their schemes for so long." He reached across to take her hand briefly. "We're closer than he realizes. Lady Catherine's information about the hidden compartment in his desk suggests there is tangible evidence to be found. Evidence we can't access now that he's aware of our interest." "Perhaps not directly," Sebastian conceded. "But there are other approaches. Every conspiracy of this magnitude involves multiple participants. Not all will be as careful as Ellsworth." When they returned to Northcott House, Lady Catherine was waiting, concern evident beneath her usual imperious manner. "You're back early. I take it things did not go as planned." Over tea in her private sitting room, they related the events at Ellsworth Park. Lady Catherine listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly stern. "So Ellsworth thinks to threaten a young woman under my protection, does he?" she said when they finished. "How very unwise of him." "Aunt Catherine," Sebastian began, "I'm concerned that my association with this matter places me at risk." She waved a dismissive hand. "Nonsense. At my age, there are few threats that carry weight. I've outlived 2 husbands, buried a child, and survived the worst society gossips could devise when I chose to travel alone after my second widowhood. Ellsworth and his cronies hold no terror for me." She set down her teacup with a decisive click. "Moreover, Elizabeth Ellsworth was my dearest friend for 40 years. If her husband was involved in fraud that contributed to her reduced circumstances in her final years, I have a personal interest in seeing him answer for it." Her determined support bolstered their resolve. That evening, they reconvened in the study to reassess their strategy. "Direct access to Ellsworth's papers is no longer feasible," Sebastian acknowledged, "but there may be another approach through Lord Bannister." Bannister, Amelia frowned. Lady Catherine mentioned he changes allegiance frequently. Would he be a reliable ally? "Not an ally," Sebastian clarified. "A weak link. Bannister's financial situation is precarious. Gambling debts have forced him to mortgage his primary estate. He needs the income from these shipping ventures more desperately than the others." Making him vulnerable to pressure, Amelia realized. "Exactly, and I happen to hold a significant portion of his debt through various investments." Sebastian's expression was calculating. "A fact he may not be fully aware of, given the complex structure of my holdings." "You're suggesting we use that as leverage?" "I'm suggesting we arrange a private conversation where that leverage might be mentioned." He met her gaze directly. "It's not an approach I would normally consider, but given what's at stake, your father's reputation, possibly justice for my own father's death, I believe it justified." Amelia nodded slowly. 5 years ago, she might have balked at such tactics, but the woman who had lost everything to these men's machinations no longer clung to abstract principles when justice hung in the balance. "How do we arrange this meeting?" "Bannister attends the Athenaeum Club every Wednesday evening. I'll ensure we encounter each other privately." 2 days later, Sebastian returned from the club with a triumphant gleam in his eye. He found Amelia in the library, where she had been reviewing their notes for the 100th time. "Bannister broke," he announced without preamble. "After I made it clear that his financial future rested entirely in my hands, he became remarkably forthcoming." "What did he reveal?" Amelia set aside her papers, heart racing with anticipation. "Everything." Sebastian paced the room, energy radiating from him. "The entire scheme from beginning to end. 5 years ago, Ellsworth, Carrington, and Sir William Holt formed a consortium to secure exclusive shipping contracts with the East India Company. They bribed officials, falsified cargo manifests to avoid duties, and defrauded investors, including my father. And when your father discovered the fraud, he took his evidence to your father, who was presiding over a related case. When they realized the danger, they orchestrated my father's accident, and then framed your father for bribery to discredit any ruling he might make against their interests." Amelia closed her eyes briefly, the confirmation of what they had suspected landing like a physical blow. "Did Bannister admit to murder?" "Not directly. He claims the plan was simply to warn my father off that his death was an unfortunate escalation, but he named Carrington as the one who arranged it." "Do you believe him?" "I believe he's telling the truth as he knows it." Sebastian stopped pacing and sat beside her. "More importantly, he's willing to provide written testimony in exchange for financial clemency. It won't be enough to bring murder charges after 5 years, but combined with the evidence we've already gathered, it could be enough to clear my father's name," Amelia finished, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," his hand covered hers on the armrest. "Bannister will bring the documents tomorrow, shipping records, account books, correspondence that proves the conspiracy." Hope, that dangerous luxury Amelia had denied herself for so long, bloomed painfully in her chest. "And then we take everything to the Lord Chief Justice. He's an honorable man who succeeded your father. I believe he'll want to see justice done, even belatedly." That night, Amelia couldn't sleep. She paced her room, too agitated by the prospect of vindication to find rest. 5 years of shame and reduced circumstances, of whispers behind fans and doors closed to her, all based on lies crafted to protect powerful men's interests. And Sebastian, what would happen between them once this was resolved? Their shared purpose had created an undeniable bond, one that went beyond the initial alliance of convenience. She had seen the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't aware, felt the lingering touch of his hand on hers that went beyond mere reassurance. But a duke and a judge's daughter, even a vindicated one, was an impossible match. Society would never accept it, and Sebastian's position demanded an appropriate alliance. Whatever his personal feelings, duty would ultimately prevail. Better to focus on the victory at hand. Her father's name cleared, her own standing restored if modestly. It would have to be enough. The next day brought Bannister as promised, clutching a leather portfolio and looking like a man attending his own execution. In the study, with Lady Catherine present as witness, he signed a detailed statement outlining the conspiracy and turned over documents that corroborated his account. "This doesn't absolve you of responsibility," Sebastian told him coldly as the man prepared to leave. "But your cooperation will be noted when the matter is brought before the authorities." Bannister's relief was palpable. "Thank you, Your Grace. I never wanted any part in Lockwood's disgrace, or in what happened to your father. Ellsworth and Carrington were the driving forces." "Save your justifications," Sebastian replied. "They'll serve you better before a judge." Once Bannister had departed, Sebastian turned to Amelia, his expression softening. "We have what we need. I'll arrange a meeting with the Lord Chief Justice for tomorrow morning." So soon, the prospect of finally achieving what had seemed impossible just months ago left her breathless. "There's no reason to delay," he took her hands in his. "By tomorrow afternoon, the process of clearing your father's name will be underway." Lady Catherine cleared her throat pointedly. "I believe I'll have cook prepare something special for dinner tonight. A celebration seems in order." She swept from the room, leaving them alone. For a moment neither spoke. Then Sebastian raised Amelia's hand to his lips in a gesture that went beyond propriety. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said softly, "know that working with you these past weeks has been the most fulfilling experience of my life." Amelia's heart constricted. "For me as well," she admitted. "I never expected to find such an ally, such a friend in you." "Is that what we are, friends?" His gaze held hers, searching. Before she could respond, Jenkins appeared at the door with a telegram. "Urgent message for you, Your Grace." Sebastian reluctantly released her hand and took the telegram, his expression darkening as he read. "What is it?" Amelia asked, alarmed by his reaction. "Ellsworth," he handed her the telegram. "He's calling my bluff. Listen to this. Evidence of your father's complicity in fraud discovered among Harrington's papers will be delivered to authorities unless investigation ceases immediately." Complicity. That's absurd. "Is it?" Sebastian ran a hand through his hair. "My father was an investor in these companies. Ellsworth could easily have manufactured evidence suggesting he knew about the fraud, was perhaps even participating in it." "No one would believe it," Amelia insisted. "Your father's reputation can be destroyed as easily as your father's was." His voice was bitter. "Ellsworth is offering a trade, my father's posthumous reputation for your father's." "What will you do?" she asked quietly. Sebastian's expression hardened. "Take everything to the Lord Chief Justice as planned. My father was no saint, but he was an honest man. I won't let Ellsworth tarnish his memory with false accusations, even if it means risking his reputation in the short term." "Are you certain? Your father's name will withstand scrutiny," he said firmly. "The truth may be buried for a time, but it finds its way to light eventually. Isn't that what your father wrote to you?" Amelia nodded, moved by his resolve. "Then we proceed as planned." The following morning found them in the formal office of Lord Chief Justice Hammond, a distinguished jurist in his 60s who had known both their fathers. He listened gravely as they presented their evidence: Bannister's signed statement, the shipping records, the correspondence implicating Ellsworth and his conspirators in fraud and judicial interference. "These are serious accusations against prominent men," Hammond said when they had finished. "If proven, they would constitute one of the most egregious perversions of justice in recent memory." "We believe the evidence speaks for itself, my lord," Sebastian replied. Hammond nodded slowly. "It does indeed, Your Grace." and it corresponds with certain irregularities I observed in Judge Lockwood's case at the time. The speed of the proceedings, the convenient evidence, his uncharacteristic confession, all raised questions that were never satisfactorily answered. He turned to Amelia. "Miss Lockwood, I knew your father well. His disgrace troubled me greatly, as I could never reconcile the man I knew with the crimes alleged. I am gratified to see his character vindicated, albeit posthumously." "Will there be a formal reversal of his conviction?" she asked, hardly daring to hope. "I will institute proceedings immediately," Hammond confirmed. "As for the conspiracy itself, Ellsworth and his associates will face charges based on this evidence. Given their positions, the process may be protracted, but justice will be served." "And the threat against the Duke's father's reputation?" Amelia asked. Hammond's expression hardened. "Any false accusations will be treated as what they are: desperate attempts by guilty men to deflect attention from their crimes. The 6th Duke of Northcott was known to me as a man of integrity. His son's efforts to uncover this conspiracy only confirm the family's commitment to justice." As they left the Lord Chief Justice's chambers, a weight seemed to lift from Amelia's shoulders. For the first time in 5 years, she walked without the burden of her father's disgrace. "It's really happening," she said wonderingly as they entered the carriage. "My father's name will be cleared." Sebastian took her hand, his expression solemn. "It may take some time for the formal proceedings to conclude, but yes, your father's reputation will be restored, as will yours." "Thank you." The words seemed inadequate for all he had done, for the risk he had taken with his own father's memory. "I can never repay you for this." "I don't want repayment." His voice was low, intense. "Amelia, these past weeks, working with you, coming to know you, have changed me in ways I never anticipated." Her heart quickened at his use of her given name, Sebastian. "Please let me finish." He tightened his hold on her hand. "When I first sought you out, I had a clear purpose: to uncover the truth about my father's death and, if possible, clear your father's name in the process. I saw you as a means to that end, an ally of convenience." He smiled ruefully. "I did not expect to find a woman of such intelligence, courage, and principle. A woman who, despite years of unjust treatment, maintained her dignity and determination. A woman I have grown to admire beyond all others." Amelia could scarcely breathe. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I love you." The words hung in the carriage between them. "And I know that must seem sudden, perhaps even opportunistic given today's events, but—" "I love you too," she interrupted, the truth she had been denying for weeks finally breaking free. "Though I've tried very hard not to." His expression transformed with wonder. "Why would you try not to love me?" She laughed softly. "Because I'm practical, Sebastian. A duke does not marry a disgraced judge's daughter, no matter how vindicated." "Is that what you think? That I would allow society's expectations to dictate the choice of my heart?" He shook his head. "Amelia, if these past weeks have taught me anything, it's that the opinions of society are often based on falsehoods, prejudices, and incomplete understanding." "Even so," she persisted, "your position—" "My position gives me the privilege of making my own choices." He cupped her cheek gently. "And I choose you if you'll have me." The carriage had stopped outside Northcott House, but neither made any move to exit. In the private sanctuary of the vehicle, Amelia allowed herself to believe, just for a moment, that this impossible thing might be possible after all. "Your aunt will have strong opinions about this," she said finally. Sebastian laughed. "My aunt has already informed me that if I don't offer for you properly once your father's name is cleared, she'll disinherit me from her personal fortune and adopt you instead." "She didn't." Amelia's eyes widened. "She most certainly did. Last night while you were resting before dinner." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "So you see, I'm under considerable pressure to make an honest woman of you." "Well, we can't have Lady Catherine disappointed," she murmured, a smile tugging at her lips. "Indeed not." He leaned closer. "Amelia Lockwood, would you do me the very great honor of becoming my wife? Not because your father's name is now cleared, not because my aunt demands it, but because I love you and cannot imagine my life without you in it." Tears blurred her vision, as 5 years of carefully maintained barriers crumbled under the weight of unexpected joy. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." His kiss was gentle, reverent, a promise of the future they would build together. The news of Judge Lockwood's posthumous exoneration appeared in the Times 3 weeks later, alongside the announcement of criminal charges against Lord Ellsworth, Sir William Holt, and James Carrington for fraud, bribery, and interference with judicial proceedings. The investigation into the death of the previous Duke of Northcott was reopened, though conclusive evidence remained elusive after so many years. Society buzzed with the revelations, the scandal of the conspiracy quickly overshadowing any lingering stigma attached to the Lockwood name. When the engagement between the Duke of Northcott and Miss Amelia Lockwood was announced the following month, it created a sensation of a different sort. "A love match," Lady Catherine declared firmly to anyone who dared express surprise at her nephew's choice. "And a most suitable one at that. The girl has more intelligence and character than half the vapid debutantes paraded before him these past 10 seasons." Their wedding at St. George's, Hanover Square, was attended by the cream of society, many of whom had once shunned Amelia. She wore white silk with seed pearls, and if some guests noted the absence of a father to give her away, they were silenced by the sight of the Lord Chief Justice himself performing that honor. Sebastian waited for her at the altar, his expression one of undisguised adoration as she walked toward him. In that moment, Amelia felt her father's presence as surely as if he stood beside her, vindicated, restored, at peace. Later, in the quiet of their chamber at Northcott House, Sebastian handed her a small box. "A wedding gift," he said softly. Inside lay a delicate gold locket. When she opened it, she found a tiny folded paper sealed with the Northcott crest, a miniature letter. "The first of many," he promised, as she unfolded it to read the single line inside. "Truth, once found, cannot be lost again." Amelia closed the locket around the precious words and placed it around her neck, where it would rest close to her heart. "Nor can love," she whispered, reaching for her husband's hand. In the years that followed, as they built their life together, raised children, and used their position to advocate for judicial reform, that simple truth remained their guiding principle. The secret letters that had revealed a conspiracy had also uncovered something far more precious: the capacity of love to heal even the deepest wounds of injustice and restore what had once seemed irretrievably lost.